that is the theory of aspect-oriented programming. The way that we should think about this is AOP provides a framework for how to think about building these types of tools. And the first tool that we'll specifically look at, validations in Rails, how do they work? So if we're going to specify something declaratively in our model class, what we want to specify are the properties that this validation has. And so Rails provides a bunch of common examples. This is a place where it's not particularly worth memorizing every single example that Rails provides, but recognizing that there is Rails documentation that tells us how to look them up. Some really common versions, though, they have a standard way of writing the length, so we can assert that the length of some particular field in our application is within some range. There's a key called presence, which just says, ensure that there's some valid data, or just any data in this field. Of course, commonly for programmers, you can apply a regular expression to validate the content of a field. Useful, but sometimes you have to be careful with that. And Rails gives us hooks for conditionally providing validation. So we can say perhaps ensure that a rating is present only for certain kinds of movies, or ensure that a user matches some properties only if their sign-up date is after some certain fact. Perhaps you have terms and conditions or something like that. And so the way that Rails does this is through a statement called validates. And while Rails provides a lot of built-in functionality, of course this is Ruby, so we can write our own custom functions to validate perhaps more specific properties. Perhaps we need something that Rails doesn't necessarily provide. So we can write our own functions that get called at runtime. And the way that Rails does this is all of our validations, what they will do is they will add to a special property of our model called errors. And if errors exist after validating the model, that will signal to Rails as a framework that something has gone wrong in creating or setting up this data, and those errors will be presented to the user or logged. So how does this work in Rails? Well, Active Record provides what are called lifecycle callbacks. So along the way, when we work with the model, we're going to say something like movie.new. And the second that we start to call movie.save or movie.create, what Rails is going to do is run through a series of active record callbacks that we can define in order. So there are things on here like before update or before create that Rails gives us the ability to run automatically. There's also ones critically here before validate, which is where Rails will set up some steps internally. We could customize them if we need to, but they'll set up our world. They will then run our own custom validations and pass that data back. And so most often, we don't need to specify our own callbacks, but the flow is here such that every time we save or update a model, Rails will run through a series of 6 or 7 functions that we could customize. And so as your applications get more complicated, you'll see things like before save, after save, before create, and so on. And so there's a set of those in the Rails documentation. But essentially, along the way, Rails is going to look for those validations that we specify in our models file. We'll automatically run those validations. And if no errors arise, it'll continue with saving the data to our database. If an error arises, it will abort the cycle, and it'll be up to you as the programmer to sort of decide, do I present that information to a user in a flash message? Is this a database action that's happening in the background that just fails and alerts someone else? Your application then gets to decide how to respond. But Rails will automatically run those validations. We'll also see that we can use a method called valid question mark, which allows us to interactively determine whether or not a model is valid. So perhaps we have a particular flow or we're setting up some test cases, we can ask specifically if a model is validated. The way that this works is that if something is invalid, operations like save or create will fail, and they will fail in a way in which we can inspect the reasons that the model is invalid. So if you think about a user working on your application, perhaps you've, as a user, typed an email incorrectly or something like that. These errors allow your application to present exactly what went wrong to the user.